What is up, guys? Toss a coin here. Today we're going to look at the magic weapons in Valheim and our best options. Magic was introduced into the Mistlands update and adds a completely new playstyle. It definitely feels like the Mistlands pressures players to try the new magic due to most of the enemies of that biome being resistant to pierce, slash, and blunt damage. I think magic has some potential for everyone and can really diversify builds. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up is the Dead Razor. This weapon allows you to summon some skeleton allies to fight by your side at the cost of 40% of your current health and 100 Eider. The health cost isn't really too big of a deal because you can summon your minions before you are ever near combat and just regen the lost health. Each upgrade of the Dead Razor allows you to summon an extra skelly ally. However, we are currently limited to 2 minions due to only being able to get the Dead Razor leveled to 2. The skeletons are definitely much stronger than your average skeleton mob, but it seems they struggle to handle Mistland tier mobs. In this clip, I have my blood magic at level 2, and the skeletons have absolutely no chance against 2 seekers. They hit for about 25 damage on the seekers, and yes, I know, the damage is resisted by the seekers, but most mobs in the Mistlands will resist their damage. On this one, my blood magic is level 50. The skeletons do hit harder as you level. These guys are hitting for about 45 to 48 damage. They do a little bit better against 2 seekers, but I still have to mop up the remainders. The skeletons work much better when in combination with the Staff of Protection, and they can serve as good diversions or extra DPS when summoned as archers, but I wouldn't rely solely on them for combat in the Mistlands. They do pretty decent in the other biomes though. Now, even though they are kind of niche, they are excellent for leveling your blood magic, which is a stat shared by the Staff of Protection. You can just find a Grey Dwarf spawner and let them go to town. I dug this one out so that my minions or the Grey Dwarves wouldn't accidentally destroy it. On a side note, I learned this from the wiki. Once your blood magic is level 47, you can use the Dead Razor with the Seeker Aspic. The tooltip will say 100 Eider, and the Seeker Aspic only gives 85. But that is enough to summon some skellies. This is the lowest level that you can summon skeletons with only 1 magic food. And here's the side tip. The Butcher Knife also works on your skeleton minions in case you are trying to summon a particular type of skeleton. I think the major downside to these guys is that they struggle to follow you in the Mistlands due to the verticality of the terrain. They can definitely be useful, but it feels like they weren't meant to be the most help in the Mistlands. Next up is our Staff of Protection. With blood magic at level 0 and a level 2 Staff of Protection, you can sacrifice 40% of your current health and 60 Eider for a 200 HP shield that lasts for 2 minutes. With every level in blood magic, the cost of your health and Eider go down, and the strength of the shield goes up by 5 every level. In this clip, my blood magic is at level 25, which gives me a shield that protects me for 325 damage. As a result, I take 0 damage from a full Seeker combo. The shield at this level can only survive 1 4-hit combo, but I avoid all of that damage nonetheless. I did check the wiki, and the 4-hit combo should be doing the ballpark of 430 damage from the Seeker, so I'm not 100% sure why it works this way, but the Staff of Protection shield seems far stronger than advertised. I think the Staff of Protection is pretty mandatory for full mage builds due to how squishy you become, but it would also be pretty handy for any of my light armor enjoyers. The Protection Staff gains a lot of power if you play with friends, because you can shield them as well as yourself, but if you are playing solo, then you can always shield your skeletons. Like I said earlier, the Staff of Protection is kind of tough to level. This is due to the fact that you only gain XP when your protection bubble is popped, so keep that in mind when making one. Now we are at the magic weapons that do direct damage. The Staff of Frost and the Staff of Embers. They both do damage, but I think one is definitely better than the other, and I will explain why. I want to start by comparing damage. For the Staff of Frost, I was hitting for an average of 17.34 damage per hit. This breaks down to about 4.34 damage per single Eider. This is obviously against the Seeker, and as far as Mistlands go, I don't believe anything resists frost damage, which is something you may consider when fighting enemies in the Mistlands. On top of that, the Staff of Frost does slow your enemies, so that can be handy if you need the extra slow to kite your enemies. Next, we have the Staff of Embers. This guy hits the Seeker for an average of 86.03 damage. That is combining the initial damage and all 5 ticks of the burn dot. The damage breaks down to 2.7 damage per single Eider. against a single Seeker. The Staff of Embers may look like it is performing worse than the Frost Staff, but most encounters in the Mistlands are against multiple enemies, and the Staff of Embers can hit multiple enemies at once while the Frost Staff cannot. For those of you about to comment that the Fire Staff is resisted by the Seekers, don't worry, that came to mind while editing, so I also ended up testing the Fire Staff versus a level 2 Fulling. The Fire Staff does blunt and fire damage, and Seekers resist Pierce, Slash, and Blunt. However, the Fullings don't. The Fire Staff against a Fulling hits for an average of 142.3 and about 4.45 damage per single iter. There is more to weapons to consider than just damage. What about the range and accuracy you can effectively attack your enemies? The Frost Staff struggles to engage with enemies at range. It seems to have some kind of bloom effect, but the accuracy is low on range targets. Up close and at medium range, you should be able to land most of your attacks. However, the Staff of Embers hits where you aim. Sort of. For further targets, you do need to calculate for the drop of a fireball, but at least you can control where the projectile is going to land, unlike the randomness of the Frost Staff. On a side note, I noticed that magic attacks that land near mobs don't seem to aggro them as long as it doesn't hit them. This might be useful for picking off enemies from far away without pulling a large group. I made sure to test with the Arbalist to make sure it wasn't just a distance that for some reason would be keeping the mob from aggroing. And it just reconfirmed that the magic attacks do not have a sound radius that aggroes the mobs. So after everything I have shown you, I think the Staff of Embers is probably the best magic weapon. It might not always out DPS the Frost Staff on a single target, but it has strong AoE that is more situationally useful. The Protection Staff is probably my next runner-up for anyone that likes to play lightly armored. Every magical weapon has a purpose, and if you end up playing a mage build, you'll likely build all of them and utilize each one. If you are still here, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who watches my videos. I put a lot of effort into making quality videos, and I try to make a better one each time. I never thought I would have so many people enjoying the content I make, and I would just like to thank each of you for your support. If there is something you would like me to test, let me know in the comments. And as always guys, see you next time.